Hey, welcome everyone. We're back. Anything that I say is definitely not meant to diagnose or replace your medical care. Check with your doctor before, taking up any of these suggestions that we're going to talk about. So, on that note, we'd just like to dive right in and answer your questions. So, I know we're live social media, and also we have a green room of people. So, Steve, let's take it over and let's get these questions answered. You know, I have people that say, "Well, I can't do keto because I have a weight problem, or I can't do keto because I'm a diabetic." Well, if you have a pancreas, then you need to do keto. Keto is. I'll give you an example. Like, I'll have people that say, "Well, I have diabetes. Will the keto plan cure me? Can then be cured and go back to my normal foods?" It's kind of like having a car and it runs on unleaded. Can I go back to diesel fuel? I'm like, no, your car will not run on diesel fuel. I accidentally put it diesel fuel in my ATV, and that was a big mistake. Didn't run after that. So our bodies were designed to run on ketones. And if anyone disagrees with that, just ask them, well, what's normal blood sugar? And they'll say, well, 80 milliliters per deciliter. I say, yeah, good. So how much sugar is that? And they'll say, well, I don't know. Well, it's 1 teaspoon for all of your blood. It's like you know, almost 2 gallons of blood. So we're dealing with a very tiny amount of sugar in a fasting state. Our body was not designed to have the normal, sugar that's in like 375 carbohydrates or grams of carbohydrates. So we we do much better if we run on the right fuel source. That was my long answer. And now Yeah, it's a situation where you have brain inflammation or brain damage because you have a loss of oxygen. Absolutely, because you'll get more oxygen to the brain when you run your body on ketones. Um, just take a look at a diabetic that has high sugar. They have a lot of problems with four organs. One is the eye, the kidney, um, the the heart and the vessels, and then the brain and nervous system. So um, you'll get a lot more less oxidation, more oxygen, more healthy things happen to your brain cells. So um, the other thing too, if you have brain damage, I did a whole video on this. Omega-3 fatty acids are going to be very important. Vitamin D is going to be important, and B1 is going to be important. But definitely run the body on the right fuel source, which is the most important thing. A lot of these nutrients um, don't work unless you have the right eating implemented. So some people want to know, well, what vitamin should I take for this? Well, first let's talk about your diet. Are you doing the right things? So if you're new to my channel, go to drberg.com, download the eating plan, and then you'll be on the right thing. Okay, so that question was for if someone has hypoxic encephalopathy. What did you say? What did you say, Steve? Brain damage. Okay, brain damage due to lack of oxygen. Well, that was the question, and then I gave you the answer. So, yeah. Okay, the next question Steve is asking is, will fasting eliminate muscle tissue? No, eliminates fat tissue, not muscle tissue. Now, when you starve, that eliminates muscle tissue, but that only occurs after you get rid of all your fat. And an average person has 100,000 calories of extra fat, even if they don't have, if even if they're not overweight. So you can imagine that would give a person several months of energy without eating. So for those of you that are worried about starving your body to death when you're fasting, you don't have to worry about it. You won't. You will lose a lot of fat though, which is a plus point. Well, as you're looking for a good question, I'll talk about, there's, if you looked on the news recently, not in the news, but actually articles online, I think New York Times and different so-called credible sources, um, it'll say, well, time restricted, new study or scientists say that time restricted eating has no benefit, right? Based on new studies. Well, if you look at the source of the study, it was you can't really tell. It was sponsored by a certain organization in China and others, and they don't really tell you who the others are. And and then um, they compared intermittent fasting with a low calorie diet. So so if you look at the all these different quotes at the headlines, it says it doesn't work. It said that's completely false. You If you compare it to a low calorie diet, apparently they didn't find a significant difference, but there was an improvement, more weight loss done with intermittent fasting than low calorie diet. But anyway, that this is just a total smear campaign to try to dissuade people from doing intermittent fasting. But my whole thing is there's enough research out there that says it works. In fact, almost every single religion has fasting as a part of it. So it's been around for a very long time. And what unfortunately the food companies and the companies that make snack foods, they don't like intermittent fasting because then we're taking away your snacks. So that's pretty much why you're going to see that. But it's just I wasn't even going to make a comment on it because it was ridiculous, but I went ahead and said something about it. More and more of these sweet fruits and sweet things are you see them in certain keto plans, um, and unfortunately now it's like so many other, even synthetic carbohydrates and stuff that are being put in to these so-called healthy keto friendly meals. Um, Dates, even though it's natural, okay, it just has a lot of sugar. So it has the vitamins and minerals, but it has a lot of sugar. So it's definitely not keto friendly. Um, but it has nutrients, just like a lot of other things. Now, if we take a look at a lot of the other fruits out there, even apples, bananas, watermelon, a lot of these fruits were hybrids. They were basically man-made to increase the carbohydrates. Pineapples. So back in the day, these fruits were not as sweet, and so the problem nowadays is people say, "Well, it's natural." Yeah, it's naturally increased carbohydrates or sugars in these fruits. I mean, Honeycrisp apple is like 19 grams of sugar, not carbohydrates, but sugar. So you'd be better off drinking a soda. I mean, because there's less sugar than that. But the point is that it's very, very sweet, and yes, it has vitamins, but it's not going to help you lose weight. All right. Let me just, yeah, I can see it. Okay. The primary nutrient to boost collagen is what? That's our first question. So a lot of people are want to boost collagen to improve their the anti-aging effect, their skin. Um, to help with joint problems, but there's a very specific nutrient that can actually help boost your collagen as compared to what a lot of people do is they just eat more collagen. Well, you're going to find out why that doesn't always work. So they're not unable to digest spicy foods. Well, that's I need more data because that could be spicy foods. What from a fast food restaurant because it's so spicy. Um, yeah, usually spices aren't the problem. It's usually the other things in the food. And then the second question was what, Steve? We'll take it down one at a time. Okay. Cannot tolerate apple cider vinegar, lemons, etc. Well, I don't know what etc. means, but apple cider vinegar, it could mean that you have gastritis or your pH is maybe a little too acidic. Some people just don't like apple cider vinegar, but I will say though, if you do have an ulcer or gastritis, you apple cider vinegar is not going to be good for you, and lemon might irritate you as well. So what I would suggest that you do um, is avoid apple cider vinegar. The great majority of people do very well with apple cider vinegar, but some people don't like it. So if you have an aversion to it, avoid it because so someone asked a question about is some product good for you? Well, first of all, I need to know the ingredients. So here's the thing that I would do if you want to know something's good for you. Stay tuned for a video coming up on how to read a label, and I'm telling you, and I'm talking about like just keto in general. There are so many things right now that you're going to find that are just not the healthy version of keto, even though they might be below 50 grams of net carbs. But I'm going to talk about why the net carb might not be accurate because some of these resistant starches now are classified as fiber. Okay, fiber doesn't have any effect on insulin. So now we have a situation where there's starches, tapioca, maltodextrin. These are resistant uh, starches from cornstarch originally. They're classified as a fiber, so now you can deduct them from the total carbs, and they're not even in the sugar category. So the point is that read the labels and stay tuned for my videos. All right, the primary nutrient for most collagen is, let's see what your guesses were. So 80% said vitamin C, 10% said vitamin E, and 10% said omega-3. The correct answer is copper. Copper. Copper is involved in a very important enzyme to make connective tissue and collagen specifically. And this connective tissue is the thing um, that holds everything together. Steve, I'm getting some reverb somewhere. Before I didn't have it, now I do, Steve. Um, so So that's what collagen, that's what copper does. So copper is very, very, very important. Now, how would you end up with a copper deficiency? Because that's really what I would focus on more than getting copper from the diet, because most people can get it. Let's say you're you watched one of my videos on zinc, and you should start taking more zinc because I'm emphasizing zinc, or because of this whole the COVID thing, right, where you have to have all this zinc. Too much zinc will create a copper deficiency, and then you could show up these deficiency symptoms. And one of the big ones is that you lose collagen, and you're more susceptible to getting a hernia, more susceptible to having an aneurysm. Your skin starts to get sagging. So this collagen needs copper, and copper is a fascinating mineral. I will be releasing a video on that as well. But we don't want to neglect that trace mineral that seems to be very, very important, just as important as zinc. But if you get the zinc with copper, then you don't have to worry about anything. And that's usually what I recommend. All right. Someone wanted to know, how do you end a fast with what type of foods? Well, it really depends on how long that you're fasting for. If you're doing regular intermittent fasting, even one meal a day, you just go to your regular meals, nothing special. Okay. But if you're doing an extended fast, let's say 48, 72 hours, 5 days fasting, 7 days, then we need to be careful and go slow, and maybe have a little bit of steamed vegetables, wait an hour, maybe have an egg, wait a little bit more time, maybe eat some nuts, something like that. But don't have this big meal, and especially don't do this carb meal, because that's going to shift your electrolytes, and then you can have a really major problem if you eat too much too fast. Um, I'm a perfect example. I had to test the waters. I fasted for, I think, 3 days, and I ate a big meal. I wanted to see what would happen. I will never recommend that again. That was very, very bad. I was just literally sick to my stomach. So the system, your digestive system goes into this mode where it kind of goes to sleep, and you got to slowly wake it up, and not overwhelm it too fast. All right, how much alcohol would it take to cause early stage liver disease? Let's see if you guys can get this one. Um, I'll just leave it at that. Well, I have some very interesting videos coming up, that we can mention. Um, One is the liver. I want to talk about the liver a little bit, because um, a lot of people have a fatty liver, and the liver is a really important organ. Um, if you wanted to restore a liver that is either fatty or damaged, to increase the ability to detox poisons, then what you want to do is maintain your glutathione levels. So let me just touch on glutathione. It's a very, very important antioxidant that's in all of your cells in a very large concentration. So there's a lot of it you have. And the more that we go through stress, the more that we eat poorly, the more that we're traumatized, the more that we're have chronic inflammation, the less glutathione that we're going to have. And as you get older, you're going to have less glutathione. So this means that you're going to have a hard time detoxifying heavy metals, getting rid of poisons, getting rid of the residue from your medications. And there's over 75 different diseases that are associated with low glutathione levels. So really important to keep the glutathione very, very high in your cells, to keep things handled. What's interesting about glutathione as well, with mercury, it has a real strong affinity for mercury. So it literally will extract mercury from your cells and from your brain. So it does a lot. And the question is, what's more important, to eat certain foods or avoid certain things? And the answer is to avoid certain things. You want to avoid um, stressing the body out, avoid commercial foods, don't do too much alcohol. And if you do drink, and there might be one or two people watching that do drink, um, then I would highly recommend you eat extremely healthy, to beef up, no pun intended, your glutathione, to be able to handle the damage that's going to occur. If you're on I don't know, any medications, that you should be beefing up your glutathione by eating really, really clean to counter that effect. So the way to beef up your glutathione is to eat beef and fish, poultry, and also vegetables that are high in sulfur, like the cruciferous vegetables, especially radishes, but other things too, like garlic and onion. Um, but you get more glutathione because glutathione is coming from certain amino acids. If you consume more animal meats and things like that, than if you're just purely consuming vegetables. So um, I like a combination of meat and vegetables. So if you were to do any type of meat, add more garlic and onion to it. Add garlic and onion to your eggs, and you'll have the perfect meal to beef up your glutathione. But just realize that the more stress that you have, the more glutathione that you need. And one really cool thing that I want to mention while we're at it is if you get exposure to the sun, so you have vitamin D and you have infrared, um, both of those will increase glutathione because infrared increases melatonin and melatonin increases glutathione. So being out in the sun actually will increase your antioxidants. And then if you eat healthy on top of that and keep your stress somewhat okay, you're going to have a lot of glutathione to keep your liver in good shape. And I think that's really, really important. All right. So we're going to answer the question, how much alcohol do you have to consume to end up with early stage liver disease? So 75% said 3 drinks a day. 25% said more than 3 drinks a day. And I think we'll just give you, yeah, let me give you the correct answer, okay? Because it's kind of like I mean, who's going to come up with that unless you researched it? But this is based on a fascinating study. I'll be releasing a video on this, but um, in the study, they found that 21 episodes or bouts of binge drinking, 21 of those binge drinking events showed signs of early liver disease, which is fascinating. So what is a 21 binge drinking sessions? That's 5 or more drinks, okay? And when we talk about drinks, we're talking about um, alcohol that is slightly more than a half of an ounce of pure alcohol. So like one beer, glass of wine, a shot of alcohol, liquor, that would be considered one drink. So 5 of those, 21 times, can start giving you early liver damage. Now, um, what happens though when you drink alcohol is that your body, your liver starts to break it down, and at first it can do that, okay, and it breaks it down to these to a substance that can be very harmful to your body, a toxicity. So it's really, you'll kind of wake up with a hangover and you don't feel very good because of this toxic material, this byproduct of alcohol that your body's trying to break it down. Um, but over time, when you lose the detoxification enzymes and you start to deplete your nutrient reserves, especially B1, that's when you start having all this collateral damage and oxidation and um, inflammation of the liver, which then turns into scar tissue and a fatty liver. So again, if you drink, it's very, very important to eat healthy. Eat super healthy if you drink, and at least at the very bare minimum, you can counteract some of the free radicals and the collateral damage. But Steve, I don't know about you, but I think most people that do drink, heavy drinkers, they probably aren't eating at least 10 cups of cruciferous vegetables a day, are they? Yeah, yeah, that's not going to work. Okay, the next question is on allulose. Is that a good sweetener? I like allulose. I think it's a really great sweetener. An alternative sweetener. It's not even classified as a sugar alcohol, but it is a very good sweetener because it's 0 on the glycemic index. The other one that's good is erythritol. Xylitol, I like xylitol, but it's not 100%, it's not 0 on the glycemic index. It's like 30, so it's low. So if you have it in small amounts, it's fine. But definitely stay away from maltose, stay away from mannitol, stay away from sorbitol, or stay away from Splenda, um, and definitely stay away from any type of synthetic sugars, which is maltodextrin. But you're going to see maltodextrin in a lot of keto-friendly foods. I would avoid it if I were you, even if it's a so-called resistant maltodextrin, which I've done a video on, because the research is not out yet, and you're having this synthetic fiber, and we just don't know. There's so many things that are approved, um, but then we find out that they have problems later on. And so I'm really hesitant of anything coming out of the market in a synthetic fashion, and the safety studies are just too short. Especially if it's anything that's like it's everyone knows for sure it's going to be fine. Well, I would go in the opposite direction. In fact, I get a lot of my good material from finding out what everyone knows is true and then looking in the opposite direction, because inevitably we find out, especially if all the scientists and doctors agree that, okay, we found this to be true. Yeah, smoking is safe. And then years later, we find out, maybe it's not too safe. Okay, so if someone want to know, is drinking too much water harmful because it can flush out your minerals? Well, I don't know if you've ever had a plant in your garden where you watered it too much, right? You can water it too much and actually kill it. So we can water our bodies too much too, because you're going to dilute minerals, especially sodium, and that can create a condition called hyponatremia, and which is severe dehydration. So yes, you can drink too much water. I think you're going to be safe if you um, just drink when you're thirsty and don't overdo it. So let's say you do a high carb meal. What's the best way to get back into keto? Um, well, obviously you cheated, right? So um, it's kind of like if you cheated on your spouse. What would you have to do? Well, number one, you're gonna have to make up the damage. Number one. Number two, you're gonna have to be real clean and not cheat anymore. So um, with your diet, it's the same thing. You want to make up the damage, make up the damage, and eat really, really healthy and do really good and fast longer, and having more leafy greens, things like that, to counter the damage that you created. Um, it's a slippery slope for some people because they can't just moderate that in a certain amount. That once they start, it's the next day, boom, they crave. The next day, they crave. They get into this unhealthy pattern. I think it's very, very beneficial with both exercise as well as intermittent fasting to improve your willpower, because it's like you're restricting certain things and you're doing things that are uncomfortable. It's actually very therapeutic um, to not give in to the demands of your body all the time that says, okay, I need a brownie. I need to reward myself. No, you're not rewarding yourself. I'm sorry. You're just, the body's telling you to eat certain things because your blood sugar is low. Don't give in to it. All right. Next question is what's the best nutrient to um, maximize your height? Okay. Let's see if you guys can figure this one out. So if someone has, anorexia, okay, and they wanna start gaining weight, should they start doing fasting? No, no, I don't think so. That's that they need to, should they do the carnivore version of keto? Well, it depends. Do you have digestive problems? You may, and then I would recommend the carnivore version. Um, the reason I don't recommend it is just because I find that the healthy version of keto seems to work for the majority of people, but there's always exceptions to that. Um, I will say if you're doing carnivore, a lot of people are just doing more protein and hardly any carbs. You're going to lose some weight, so you might want to increase your carbs at least to 50 grams. You know, maybe have um, berries. That might be good carbohydrate. But it really depends on your digestive system and what you can tolerate. But gaining weight, I wouldn't try to gain weight with sugar or grains. I would do it with healthy foods, and then add exercise and make sure the quantity of food is good. So eat more calories, for example. Um, so and then definitely keep your fats on the higher end as well. That's what I would recommend. What is the best way to achieve hormonal balance? Well, the you have all these different glands that make hormones. Hormones are communications. Um, some of your hormones are made from proteins, others are made from cholesterol. So, what you don't want to do is go on a low fat, low cholesterol diet if you want to improve your hormones. Hormones like testosterone also need um, trace minerals like zinc. So, you'd want to consume foods high in trace minerals. That would be like shellfish, for example, that or seafood or fish. Um, that would be very, very important. Other things that destroy hormones would be like a high carb diet. What does the high carb diet do for insulin? It just completely jacks it up to the point where it just burns out the cells that make insulin. So, and that's probably one of the most important hormones to recover and keep it at a minimum. So you'd want to be on a low carb diet, and then be do the healthy version of that. That's called healthy keto. So, and then if you do intermittent fasting, you can also improve other hormones like growth hormone. So if you're asking the best thing to improve hormones, I would say what I'm recommending is our standard eating plan, which is the healthy keto and intermittent fasting, which you can download the page at drberg.com and get the exact plan. So here's a question from a runner. What level of carbs would you recommend? Want to eat healthy? Now it really depends. If you're just regular, a runner just exercising, again, I wouldn't change anything. But what about if you're a long distance runner? Okay. Let's say you're running a marathon or an ultra marathon. Can you get by without these carbs? I think you're going to need some carbs. Yeah, I think you're going to need carbs, but I wouldn't do what everyone else is doing with the synthetic sugars where they have this little thing, it's got like a goo, or these bars that are like dextrose or maltodextrin. That's what they consume when they're doing some of these marathons. So these are synthetic sugars, not good. You'd be much better off doing things, like definitely doing keto for a period of a year or year and a half to fully fat adapt. But then you may need some things like sweet potato. You may need some brown rice, but that would be the only time I would recommend that. Being a long distance runner. All right, so we're going to answer now the question: the best nutrient for maximizing your height. Okay, 85% say zinc, 5% calcium, 5% say animal proteins, and the answer. And then some other people say vitamin D. So here's the thing. I just want to see who was watching my video that I released today, and 85% of the people watching watched my video. So, because I talked about that, zinc is the most important trace mineral for growth when you're growing as a child to maximize your growth. Um, but there's other things too, like calcium and vitamin D for sure. But and iodine as well. If you're deficient in iodine, you're not going to grow very much. This is why it's so important if someone is pregnant or they're preparing their body for pregnancy, um, or even if you're a guy and you're going to contribute to half of those genetics. This is not just about a woman who's preparing for a pregnancy. It's about the other side as well, having very fertile DNA, so you can really develop a healthy child. So um, I think both men and women need to eat healthy well before you decide to have a baby, and then definitely during the pregnancy, and especially right after when you're breastfeeding, which is so important. If you decide not to breastfeed and you start doing um, the formulas, just realize that they're so filled with garbage and soy, which is a big experiment on our whole population, and they have sugar in there, low quality nutrients, and even the prenatals are all synthetic. So these are all things that I don't think are good when you're trying to maximize height, not just height, but just function, health. Um, I mean, the most important time is this earlier phase of life, but unfortunately, we don't emphasize this enough. All right, someone want to know what's the best supplement for improving your what was that memory? Gotcha, Steve. So I'm just gonna tell you this right now. Like, it's going to be omega-3 fatty acids, and that's why, like, probably salmon's probably the best thing for the brain. But if your diet is not good, if it's not low carb, I think this nutrient's not going to help you. So I think you need both. You need to get your right eating plan in, and then you also need omega-3 fatty acids as well. You can get it from krill, you can get it from salmon, you can get it from cod liver oil. Um, but usually fatty fish will give you enough omega-3 fatty acids, but that's really important. Other nutrients that are important for your brain, because there's other things involved, would be vitamin B1. And this is why, because what destroys the neurons is too much fuel, too much of the wrong fuel. And I'm talking about sugar and carbs. The more carbohydrate and sugar that you have, the more B1 that you need. And if you don't have enough B1 to help metabolize this fuel, glucose or carbs, then you can't use that fuel. And so the nerves starve to death. And that's what creates dementia. So by keeping enough of this B1 um, in your diet, regardless of whether you have carbs or not, then you can start to utilize the fuel. I mean, if you take a look at any person with dementia or Alzheimer's, what's happening is that the nerves they're not in communication anymore. I mean, they can't utilize the fuel. The fuel literally starve off these cells. And then what if you ever go to like a nursing home where they have a specialized place for people with Alzheimer's? What are they feeding them? Well, they're feeding them 6 to 7 meals a day, pudding, Carbo City. So it's sad to see that, but just at the very sign of the loss of memory, you need to be quickly changing your diet, getting foods high in B1, omega-3 fatty acids, and getting on a keto plan because these carbs are destroying the brain cells. Other than that, it's totally fine. Is keto safe for a 15-year-old? The answer is yes. I wish I would have started keto when I was 15. Maybe you don't want to do the intermittent fasting if you're a kid, but you want to keep your carbs low because I can't tell you how I wish I would have done that early on because how these carbs affected my ability to perform in sports, my ability to study, and I needed because I was so carved out, I couldn't study. My learning was inhibited, and also I was tired all the time. So that's why I drank a lot of coffee. So yeah, for your ability to learn mentally and also perform physically, as well as your overall mood, it'll improve your mood. Um, but I would highly recommend it. All right, the next question is the best nutrient. Oh, Steve, let's give the next question after that. All right, the best way. Let's see here. Let me see if I can see this. Oh, okay. What is the best way to boost glutathione? Plant or animal foods? All right. So the next question is someone that's 83 years old. What would be the best vitamin when they have this numbness in the fingers? Well, I already know that's what's called peripheral neuropathy. So there's something causing the damage, and usually something that's inhibiting the blood supply to the nervous system. And it can happen in the fingertips or the bottom of the feet. And the main cause of that is too much blood sugar. So the remedy is two things. One is benfotiamine, which will usually work. It's a fat soluble B vitamin, um, and or alpha lipoic acid. Both of those are really good for the nerves. Um, but let's say, for example, you've done that, and it's still for some weird reason it's not working. Then it could mean that you have too much calcium in your body. So therefore, you might want to take more magnesium. So there's other reasons, but I would first start out with the thing that I told you first because um, it's usually a high blood sugar situation that's destroying the peripheral nerves. Unless you're on chemo, that could be another reason. All right, someone want to know what is the best way to get rid of water weight? That's so easy. Cut out the sugars, which retains fluid, and consume foods high in potassium. Not a banana, but you can do it with any of the leafy greens. Um, there's a lot of herbal things you can do, but potassium is the food to help push fluid out. Um, and if you take a look at glucose in the body, glucose for every glucose molecule, you have three um, molecules of water. So when your carbs are too high, you're basically a fluid-filled sac. You're a water retainer, and the way to get that fluid out is simply to stop the sugar, get the sugar out, cut it out, go on keto. You'll probably drop 13 pounds of water weight right there. But if you want some assistant, potassium foods are going to be the key for that. Leafy greens is a good potassium source. Okay, so now we want to answer the question, what is the best way to boost your glutathione levels? Would it be plant source or animal source? 90% say animal and 10% say plant. Now, if you were listening closely, I already told you this answer early on. So that it's animal products. So if you take someone who doesn't consume animal protein is more susceptible to having an amino acid deficiency. And you need these amino acids to build up glutathione, which, by the way, is one of the most vital antioxidants. I mean, every cell in your body has a significant amount of glutathione. And so, I mean, it can help you protect you against it's like a little superhero because it protects you against the bad stuff. And and there's a lot of bad stuff in your environment. So you have this thing that can counter stuff, and then but when you get older, you don't produce it as much. So you need to get it from the diet and the environment. Um, Even keeping your stress level low can increase this. So there's a whole bunch of things you can do. I'll release the video on this shortly, but glutathione is a powerhouse when it comes into the helper molecule to keep the poisons, especially lowering your risk from getting cancer. Because think about what cancer is. Cancer starts with genetic damage to the mitochondria. Well, guess where glutathione exists? It's made in the outside of the cell, but then it actually works in the mitochondria. So it keeps the mitochondria from becoming damaged. So it's very, very potent as its antioxidant effect for cancer and keeping you living a long and healthy life. So Marcy want to know, can slim people do keto who don't want to lose weight? I think, it's it's not just for people that want to lose weight, it's for people that want to be healthy. Um, there's so many other benefits, and I'll just run down the list. One is cognitive improvement. That's improvement in focus, concentration, and memory. We also have mood elevation. So if someone is depressed or has anxiety or highly irritable, they should be doing it as well. Reducing inflammation, increasing your ability to learn new things, being more creative, having better energy levels. I mean, these are all just huge, huge things you should think about doing keto for. So it's not just about weight loss. And then you have other people that are thin that say, well, I don't need to change my diet because I'm thin, thinking that, oh, diets are only for people that need to lose weight. You need to expand your viewpoint on that. There's other reasons why you should do keto and IF, which I don't even I consider it like the diet that is should be normal for us. Any tips on eating raw meat? Oh, any risks for eating raw milk? Yeah, especially if you're doing chicken. I mean, the quality of chicken. This is why you should always cook your chicken thoroughly, and because if you eat raw chicken, you're highly susceptible of getting E. coli simply because of the antibiotics that they give these chickens. Create a situation where now you have super bugs, and so, but it's not just even the raw chicken. It's the you cut the chicken on the cutting board, and you put your hands on the cutting board, and it ends up in your body, and then you wonder why you have this serious infection now. So if when you go to McDonald's, make sure and you order the Chick-fil-A or wherever, don't eat it raw. Don't ask for it raw. I would possibly maybe cook it. And I'm being very sarcastic. You would. No, no. There's other, like I'm telling you, like raw fish is very, very healthy. Just you have to make sure that if I'm going to do raw fish for myself, I'll actually freeze it for 72 hours, thaw it out, then I will cook it and eat it. I think that's a very healthy thing. And it's also healthy to have raw meat as well. It's easier to digest, but I would recommend doing a really healthy source of that as well. Um, yes, but there's a lot of benefits in raw meat. Um, um, okay, as far as hemorrhoids go, someone want to know about hemorrhoids. Um, that's usually in the classification of varicose veins because there's a lot of veins down there, loose veins, or weakened veins, and copper is a good remedy for that. Copper can help strengthen the vascular system. It can help because it's all collagen, so that would be something I would recommend. There's a lot of other remedies that you can take, um, but I think copper would be the most important one with that, and then also making sure you eat healthy because the liver is usually behind that. Steve, we have some guests in our green room. Is there a way that we can get some? Well, what about typing in? Oh, what about can they type in their Okay. So Jillian has a question. He's on now, but somehow we can't hear him for some reason. And his main thing is he wants to lower blood pressure. Is that right, Steve? And increase testosterone? Anything else? Yeah. So 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 he eats a dozen eggs. He's doing all the right things. I mean, I don't think that's a problem at all. Honestly, I think there's a lot of nutrition in that. But as far as blood pressure goes, okay, there's a couple different causes of blood sugar. You know, you have the elasticity of this of the actual vessel itself. When the vessel becomes hardened, the blood pressure can go up. That's one cause. But there's other causes too, like a potassium deficiency, um, like a vitamin D deficiency. So, what I would do, I would take one thing at a time, and you might have already tried this, Julian. I would start doing high levels of vitamin D. Did that help you? Okay, yes, great. If it did not help you, then is there any reason why might not be absorbing vitamin D? And there's an interesting thing on this. If you ever had that test, it's called 23andMe, where you can see if you have a vitamin D genetic problem with vitamin D that you just can't absorb it. Like I had one patient who, she was taking vitamin D, but she had a genetic problem with the absorption of vitamin D because the receptors were like mutated. So I said, "Wow, that's incredible." So we upped it dramatically. Like I think it was 60 or 70,000 per day for a while. Oh my gosh, she did really good. She slept like a baby. So that's just one thing in the back of my mind. And then we have potassium. Um, I don't know if you're having enough potassium. I would try that too. I would try to get at least, maybe 5,000 IUs from your food and also supplemental. See if your blood pressure comes down. The other thing with the blood pressure is um, if we the blood pressure is related to something called the heart, and they're connected. And so what happens is when you have check your blood pressure, you're measuring what's called the sympathetic nervous system, and then the relaxation is called the parasympathetic. So we have the systolic is the sympathetic, and the parasympathetic is the diastolic. So you could have a problem with you're heavy on the systolic and low on the diastolic. There's a great test. It's called heart rate variability. Maybe you can look up online to see if you can get a home test and start testing yourself and see where your parasympathetic is. Are you heavy on the sympathetic? And because you may want to do recovery training. And what is that? Well, you would start doing an exercise, a real short, high intensity exercise, and give yourself an exaggerated amount of rest. Because when you spike your pulse rate, what's going to happen next is you have this parasympathetic coming in and pushing down your pulse rate. And if you don't allow it to push it down all the way, then you can weaken the parasympathetic. You'll never really kind of strengthen it. It's an active thing that kicks in when you stop working out. So that's just I would do some little short little thing to spike the pulse rate and then let your body come all the way down. Maybe you rest for like 3 or 4 minutes and do a series of that, like 7 of those. You will find that your parasympathetic will improve and your blood pressure should come down as well. But to evaluate that, I need a little bit more data on your lifestyle, when it started. Um, is there does it ever come down or is it always high? These are just things I would look at because If it's always high, there might be some rigidity there that you need to take more vitamin K2 to soften up the vessel. But overall, one of the most important things for the elasticity of the artery would be potassium, number one, and number two, copper. Copper is very, very important in the keeping things really, really normalized in your connective tissue area. And if you're deficient in copper, all sorts of things can get messed up. You can get a sway back. You can have varicose veins that could affect your blood pressure as well. So anyway, because I can't really talk to you right now, that would be my suggestion. You know, okay, yeah, Steve. All right. For those of you for those of you that are not in the U.S. and you wanted to order some products, we now can we have different places where we can you can get them directly from Europe, Russia, different parts out of the country. So there will be a link down below. So check it out if you want a cheaper shipping method. The best supplement to help with allergy. Well, I think the best thing for allergy would be something that would acidify your immune system. So this is why like vitamin C works, or ascorbic acid, which is kind of like the synthetic version of the so-called vitamin C, because it acidifies the body. When you acidify, you have a speeding up of the phagocytes, so it helps your immune system and other parts of the immune system. So apple cider vinegar would be a really good remedy to help reduce allergies. But Steve, I did a whole video on this, and I don't want to give people the punchline of, because I just did the video a couple days ago, and I will release it this next week on allergies. So there's a lot more to say about allergies. So I wanted to kind of save that for the release of this video that will be in a couple days. All right, Steve, I had you muted. Did you say something? Okay, so listen, I apologize for the lack of smoothness in this presentation, but stay tuned for some really good content coming up the next few days, and I will see you next Friday morning at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time in the morning. We'll see you soon. Have a good one.